Hi everyone, this is Rohit from Lifestyle Mastery, and today I'm excited to have John Lee, who's a co-founder and CEO of Vimcal, a calendar app designed to help busy professionals and remote teams. It has recently launched Vimcal EA, the first calendar designed specifically for executive assistants. A big thanks to Elizabeth Yin from Hustle Fund for the introduction. Welcome to the show, John.
Thanks, Rohit. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So you have an interesting journey. I know about Vimcal. I've heard a lot of great things about it. But before we start, you were very early into. B- After you graduated, you were in Twitter. How was the experience in Twitter? Obviously Twitter is so different now with Elon. Yeah, becoming the CEO now. But what
Right.
was Twitter in 2016?
Right. I joined Twitter in 2016. I was there for 2 years. So it was during the election years. So it's a
Yeah.
very interesting times. I think it was no secret that Twitter as a company was pretty left-leaning, but it was interesting because at the time, I think the stock price and everything wasn't doing so well. And the only thing really keeping it alive was, um, you know, the Donald Trump, basically. So it was very interesting to see that dichotomy where it was kind of like golden handcuffs because
Mm,
he was kind of keeping everything afloat. But other than that, it was a great company to work for. I really enjoyed it. Um, I do think being at a big company, uh, almost like I think I was a year out of college when I joined. I was at a startup before we got acquired by Twitter. So having those 2 years really taught me a lot of the skills to run Vimcal better.
yeah.
At first on a product level, but then also just on like a managing people level, seeing
Mm.
the best practices at a big company.
Got it. Got it. And you've been part of Twitter. Do you agree that uh, that Elon had to remove 70 to 80% of the staff and still is still functioning. And I somehow feel like a lot of big tech companies have followed suit, and
Mm.
they've seen that you don't need that sort of that number of people, especially in big companies like Google and Facebook. Or what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think when I was there were 3,000 something employees, and then when Elon came in, there were 7,000 something. So
Oh,
I think even when we were there, we had a small feeling that okay, there's a lot of people
yeah.
here. I don't know all the parts of the business. I was just one engineer in one department. So, maybe that was not enough people, maybe there was more, but like it did feel like there was a lot of people. So I think in theory, I agree with maybe you didn't need that many people to run the company. What
Mm,
I don't agree with is how he went about doing it, because there was a true culture at Twitter. People were very proud of their work. People were there for years and years and years.
true.
And a lot of old, original employees were still there.
Yeah.
So the way he gutted it, I mean, I think that was not the right thing to do.
Mm,
But could it have been bloated? Very possible.
yeah. Yeah. Got it. And one of the most impressive things in a resume is somebody who gets into YC, right? So you got into YC, building a AR solution, but you had to pivot. So you have a very interesting story because you were running out of cash. So what was the original story, and why did you have to pivot to Vinca?
Yeah, so my co-founder Mike and I were buddies from college. We decided to start hacking on some side projects.
Mm.
That's the thing that people that live in SF in their 20s do. So we played around with VR and AR at the time. It was 2017-ish. And Apple had just came out with AR Kit. So we're like, oh, okay. People are gonna start building AR apps like crazy. That's what we thought. Didn't
Yeah,
happen.
yeah.
But we're like, oh, people are gonna start building AR apps like crazy. How are they gonna monetize, right? You either monetize through having a paid app, which you know I think 1%. It has like 1% of downloads compared to free apps. Or if you can have a free app on the App Store, then you need a way to advertise. And so we're like, okay, let's build the billboards for AR, the ad network for AR. So
Oh,
imagine
okay.
you're playing like Pokemon Go, you pan to the side to the wall, and we're showing you like a Coke ad or something, right? Like that the AR native ad. So we're like, oh, this is a great idea. And I think yeah, we worked on that for 9 months on nights and weekends, and got rejected the first time from YC, and
Mm.
we got in the second time. So when YC tells you to apply again, your chances are higher. In our experience, that is true, and it was true for a lot of our batchmates. And so we got in. We knew that being entrepreneurs, playing this, the whole startup game is what we've always wanted to do, even since we were, in college,
Mm,
studying computer science. So we basically put in both of our 2-week notices the next day
mm,
and joined in summer 2018. And at that point, you're less than a year into the startup journey. You got into the one and only YC. You're so happy. You're on top of the world. And then on the first day of orientation, our partner, Adora, pulls us aside and she's like, hey, we like you guys. We don't like your idea. You should consider pivoting. And,
oh.
that was very soul crushing, as you can imagine, because we think we're these geniuses that got into YC based on our great idea. And it was not that at all. So we didn't listen to her and we waited a little longer. And about halfway through the batch, we actually ended up pivoting, this time to a fitness company. I think we did like a few different ideas in the fitness space. The one we pivoted to in YC was Twitch for fitness. We
Mm,
eventually did like an app for improving posture, for relieving back pain. We just tried a bunch of different things. And we did that for about a year. And that again went nowhere.
mm,
But that was the idea that we went to demo day with.
okay.
So we got a tiny bit of funding. That company was 5 weeks old. We had no traction, no app, just a demo on a TV.
Okay.
And I remember, when I was fundraising with all the investors from demo day, I was scheduling meetings. I just kept messing it up. So I accidentally scheduled, I think, one meeting at 4 a.m. in Hong Kong because I didn't know the time zone. I double booked a few meetings. And I just remember like you had two choices when you're trying to schedule 20, 30 investor calls at once. You either send out times manually or you send out a Calendly link.
Mm,
And I think we all know about the Calendly link and the power dynamic behind it, right? Like if you're asking someone for something, if
yeah.
I'm asking an investor for money, I don't want to send them my robot EA, like a link to like book, or like here, like go schedule something. So I did it manually. And that just caused so many problems. Probably lost at least one check because of my uh how bad I was at scheduling.
Right.
And so that problem was always like in the back of my mind, but I never thought about it as like a startup problem to solve. It was just like, oh, that was annoying.
Mm,
And then fast forward a year, we pivot, I think almost a year to the day. We pivot one last time
okay.
from fitness to calendar. So at the time, we wanted to build the best calendar for founders fundraising because of that specific problem.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, that was July 2019. We took 7 months to actually build out the prototype.
Okay.
And when we launched in early 2020, we had like 50 days of runway left. So it was a
Oh.
complete Hail Mary when we launched. But yeah, luckily people liked the product early on and we got some funding from that.
Mm. And since you had pivoted a couple of times, how did you keep up the spirits up within your team and within your co-founders? Because once you fail a few times, you would just want to give up and maybe come back and do it again. But what kept both of you, together on this?
Yeah, I think one is being young and dumb.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, one more try.
Yeah.
I think the other thing was something that Michael Seibel, who was the president of YC at the time, I
Yeah.
believe. Uh, we had an office hour with him. We were really dejected. We were pivoting and we just had no idea what to do because everyone else in our batch was like their companies were growing quickly. They were getting ready for demo day and we're starting from scratch. And we're like, oh, we just wasted YC was kind of our thought. And then he just like paused for a second and he said, hey guys, like if nothing happens out of this, like what's your worst case scenario? Well, like we go back to our old jobs. He's like, yeah, you go back to your 6-figure tech jobs. And then he's like, um, what's the best case scenario? We're like, obviously we all know what the best case scenario is. And then he said, from what I've seen, most people think they get multiple shots at this, but what he's seen was that most people actually just try it once. Like if you go into startup land, it doesn't work out, you go back to another job. He said most people don't go back a second time. And
Mm,
so that was kind of the push we needed. He
Yeah.
was just like, hey, you guys just have fun with this. This is your one shot. Give it all you got, to the bitter end. And yeah, if those words were true, because people, start families, they have other
Yeah.
obligations, life happens.
True.
Um, there wasn't really another option in our head until the money ran out. We're just
Mm.
gonna try whatever we could till the end.
Nice. Nice. And I read somewhere that you have 10,000 user more than that, but you personally onboarded 1,000 users over 30-minute calls, and
Mhm.
that just blew my mind. I have a huge following on LinkedIn. I mean, not that huge, but I've personally reached out and spoken to them. But onboarding customers over 30-minute calls, and that to over 1,000 is phenomenal. How did you get the time to do it?
Yeah. So at the beginning, we didn't have a choice. Like I mentioned, we launched with 50 days of runway left in the
Yeah.
bank.
Yeah.
And because of that, we didn't have time to build an onboarding flow in the product. We didn't have time to build payments, like hook up Stripe. So my job, while Mike was working on actually, building out and fixing bugs, my job was to onboard people and ask them for the credit card at the end of the call. I
Wow.
was the payment modal, basically. So, but also, we wanted to talk to as many users as possible. And
True.
so we just thought, okay, let's just make that the only option you have to go through me to try the product.
Mm.
And the learnings were just so fast. It's hard to explain if you haven't experienced it, but just seeing someone click around, they don't need to say anything. Just like if you see someone need 2 or 3 clicks or moving their mouse across the screen to do something that was not intended, you just learn that you got to redesign everything to make it easier for the user. It's just all these little things, just witnessing people use the product. So I think because of that, one thing that was instilled into our company DNA is just very quick iteration.
Mm.
Not only on feedback, like verbal feedback, but also just like watching people. To this day, 25% of our new users come through onboarding calls. So we try to push as many people to onboarding calls as possible. I think at one point, every single employee has onboarded 100 people, regardless of the position, right? As our
Wow.
team has grown, that's changed. But I think the first, 6, 7 employees, everyone onboarded at least 100.
Wow. Interesting.
So yeah, getting close to our customer, knowing them on a first name basis, the majority of our users have seen a face for 30 minutes to this company. You can't say that a lot about a
Yeah.
lot of software tools you use, right? So you have a different connection and you with the company, and you are more likely to become a power user.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And you wrote an interesting post about it took you 11 months and
Mhm.
181 investor meetings to raise your last round, and that too in such a difficult time. And you had a interesting note about that you're not a calendar company, you're like a meetings company.
Mhm.
Uh, but why do you say that? Isn't Vimcal like the fastest calendar app for remote teams? Is that how I positioned it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think the key word is teams.
Mm.
What we're really good at, and the problem that we've always solved from the beginning, is helping you schedule meetings. So
Mm.
Vimcal is designed for a specific type of user.
Okay.
It's designed for work. It's designed for someone who has a lot of meetings, or as we say, too many meetings, which I
Yeah.
think a lot of people can relate with. And yes, the format of Vimcal is a calendar, but I see us as solving problems, this type of problems that like a Calendly will solve more so than a Google Calendar, right? For example, people go to use something like a Mixmax or Calendly because they have too many meetings to schedule on their calendar, that just the Google or Outlook calendar doesn't suffice anymore. So they need a scheduling tool. And I
Mm.
think at that point, that's when you become qualified to use
Mm.
what we count as a qualified user for Vimcal.
Mm.
So I think there are a lot of calendars out there,
Yeah.
but a lot of them are more for just, displaying events and what's coming up. It's not really built for power users who have a ton of meetings, and especially teams, right? If you as an individual have a lot of meetings to schedule, that's great. But if you and 2 coworkers need to schedule a sales call with someone externally, like all these combinations of internal scheduling with external, we handle all of that. And so
Mm.
that's why like people who, again, have a lot of meetings. Their teams have a lot of meetings. They come to Vimcal instead of the other alternate solutions. And that's why we're more of a meetings company rather than a calendar company.
Got it. And another interesting point you made was about a strong stance about AI, because I've seen in the last couple of years, I think a lot of funding has gone into AI first companies, but
Mhm.
what's been your position and what's your advice to listeners or founders
Mm.
about AI when an investor asks them about how will AI disrupt their industry?
Yeah, that's a good question. I raised from basically all of 2023 I was raising. And so
Okay.
if you think back to 2023, it was like the bottom of the market,
True.
all the VC, money dried up, and ChatGPT was just crushing everything. And that was all you heard about, right? So every investor meeting I took, there was a question. It's like, how are you using AI? How will AI affect you? How will AI do X? How will AI do Y? How will you, all that. So I, it's been 6 months. I'm not sure if it's still relevant. I'm guessing it is. But
Yeah.
uh, if you want to talk to investors now, you do have to have a very strong opinion about your business on how it will leverage AI, if it will or not, and
Yeah.
if not, why not? Very strong answer. Um, and a lot of times I found that my answer to AI and calendars was almost controversial, but my
Mm,
reasoning was good. So
mm,
that was a moment when they perked up, like, oh, I never thought about it that way, right? And I
mm.
think for some people that might have changed the course of the pitch. And
Right.
so I think that's why it's a good opportunity for you to stand out, because most people will probably pitch the same story about AI in their company.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And you launched Vimcal uh, EA in 2023 and it has already started contributing to your revenues. And you also working with a lot of VCs. But how did you come up with this product? And what's the thesis behind Vimcal EA?
Yeah. So Vimcal EA, or we just rebranded from Vimcal Maestro.
Yeah.
Uh, it's the first calendar designed specifically for executive assistants, virtual assistants, chiefs of staff. So basically anyone who schedules on behalf of someone else. And these are usually people who are like C-suite VIPs, with a lot of important meetings, a lot of high stake meetings. So this, again, like most of our ideas, came from onboarding users. Early on, we would onboard user after user, and there are certain profiles that came out of that, and one of them was the executive assistant.
Mm,
As you can imagine, executive assistants, their job is like 70% calendaring, so
yeah.
they would always look for the new solutions. And it turns out that everything on the market at the time was designed for personal scheduling. So scheduling for yourself, right? If you are an EA and you schedule for the CEO, COO, CFO, Google Calendar just isn't going to cut it.
Yeah.
Like all the other tools out there aren't going to cut it, because these people are always traveling. They have board meetings that have like 5 other very important people on it. Um, it's just very different use cases. So because of that, after a lot of conversations with EAs, we realized that, oh, Vimcal actually could solve these, but we need 3 or 4 tweaks to help with delegated scheduling. So it was always in the back of our minds, and we basically started building out a beta on the side for like a year, just playing around with it, testing it out, talking to EAs. And then it got to a place where it was actually really good. And now I would say it's quite a bit more powerful than regular Vimcal in the things it can do. It's still mostly the same functionality. If you need to schedule meetings, usually it's the same features. Um, but yeah, we refer to EAs as the Navy SEALs of calendar users,
Yeah.
because they do have the craziest use cases. So yeah, we're pretty proud to serve them and basically be the only company that serves them in the scheduling field.
Got it. Got it. Interesting. And especially when you're looking at shipping a product, what do you what is more important, the speed or the quality?
Speed. Speed dictates quality. You get to quality faster with speed.
Hmm.
Yeah. So how short your iteration cycle is,
Okay.
which translated is how often do you talk to your users?
Mm, got it. And especially, what has been your lessons when when you try to do product reviews with your team?
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat that, please?
What's been your biggest lessons when it comes on what it takes to do product reviews very well with your team?
That's a good question. One, I think it harks back to what if we've released this to some users, what did the user say?
Yeah.
Um, so Alex on our team, for example, he's kind of the go-to guy that's always talking to EAs. So anytime we're trying to come up with features for EAs, he has to be on the call. Nothing anyone else says matters because he knows what EAs wants and EAs don't want. And then as well as like other people that are talking to EAs. I think two, to look at what makes a good feature product, I think you have to think about the harmony of the individual features. So a lot of times you might be shipping a new feature and you're just looking at everything through the lens of that new feature, right? You're not seeing how it connects to all the other features around it in the view. You're not thinking about how, okay, a new user comes in, how do they find this feature, right? Because everyone that's designing this are very advanced users of Vimcal or whatever product. So the new user experience, the harmony, I think that's one thing that when you feel a product that just it's very intuitive, but you can't explain what it is, it's that harmony. It's that things are easy to learn, but not too obvious. There's a lot of features, but they're not all in your face, right? It's this perfect balance. And so that's kind of an art that I feel like in our product reviews, we're always considering.
Mhm. And how can product teams drive that focus in product reviews? What would work and what would not work when it comes to such product reviews?
Yeah, I think one question we always ask ourselves when we're like debating whether to add something is this an always better, right?
Mm.
If we add this button or this sub feature of a feature, in all cases, is this an improvement, right? I think it's called like a Pareto improvement. Is this an
Yeah.
always better than the past, or by introducing this new thing, you're confusing some people over here? I would say that's the main question we're always asking ourselves. And so if you just add a bunch of these improvements that are always better, 3 months down the line, the future's gonna be better as long
Mm.
as you keep the harmony in check.
Got it. And what's been your biggest challenge when it comes to user acquisition, especially when you're launching new products like Vimcal EA?
Yeah, yeah. Vimcal EA has been an interesting case because EAs tend to be overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated. So
Yeah.
we've actually found it very interesting that they are dying to talk to us. I want to reach out to them. So I think the interesting learning from this is that we're finding ourselves building vertical SaaS, building the power tool for EAs. And so I think the go-to-market is just very different from regular Vimcal. Regular Vimcal is more PLG. It's more mass market. We have like 7 different ICPs that we handle. Whereas for Vimcal EA, it's one type of person. They're usually at bigger companies. So
Mm.
now we have to go more sales-led instead of PLG
Yeah.
bottoms up. We're going top down. So we're building out our sales team now. And because it's vertical, all of our content and our marketing is geared towards one personality.
Mm.
Whereas before it's like we try not to mention jobs or roles that much. So I
Mm.
think we have a two-pronged approach now to our marketing and sales, where like half the company effort is going towards PLG bottoms up, mass market, and half
Mm.
is going to EAs at big companies, Fortune 500. So that's
Mm.
kind of been the challenge of just like how much effort do we put in either? Because
Yeah.
we're a small team, we're 13 people. We don't
Yeah.
plan to grow that much larger. So we have to
Mm.
be very careful about what we prioritize.
Right. And with an interesting point. But is it possible to do both enterprise and PLG at the same time?
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, absolutely. So the way we're doing it is we're we're doing it in a way where one feeds into the other.
Mm,
So a lot of Vimcal users will refer their EAs. A lot of EAs will get their coworkers onto Vimcal. So there is actually a lot of synergy there. But
okay.
because it's very early in the EA space,
Yeah.
there's a lot to figure out for us.
Mm. And how does one provide enough value in a PLG motion to convert it an enterprise buyer?
Yeah, the one thing that we saw has worked really well is building out more team features.
Mm,
So for a long time, Vimcal was single player.
okay.
You could add people to the same like subscription, but there weren't any team features, right? And I think we made the change last year to focus a lot of our product development on team scheduling, right? Booking link with multiple team members. Again, 3 internal people scheduling with 2 external people. All these cases, where the more people from your company are on Vimcal now, the more useful the Vimcal experience is.
Mm,
And that has been one of our greatest growth levers. And that goes from 1-person team to small team to eventually enterprise.
mm. Got it. Interesting. And you mentioned that you have a small team. You got 30 employees, but every team member would be so crucial. But what are some of the traits that you look at when you're looking to hire somebody in your
Mm.
team?
Our philosophy in hiring is to hire underdogs.
Mm,
So if you actually look at the people that make up our team, um, they have really, really obscure backgrounds.
hmm
Um, I I feel like we subconsciously started doing this and it has paid off that, but we like to give opportunities to people who want it really badly, but they never got the opportunity before. So for actually a good amount of people were their first or second job.
Okay.
And a lot of people came from different backgrounds, which is actually something that um, our lead investor told us. He's like, one of the markers of someone who's going to be successful is if they had a career change.
Yeah.
And he told me that really recently. And I didn't realize until now that pretty much everyone at Vimcal has had a career change.
Okay.
Our engineering team consists of an ex-lawyer, ex-econ professor, ex-mechanical engineer,
Wow.
ex-stats person. Uh, and then our designer used to be a growth marketer. It's just like no one did their job before, so they had to like work really hard to catch up, to get um, to get like a network, right? Like they
Mm,
didn't just come out of college with this, and they weren't. I don't think, yeah, most of them aren't from Silicon Valley. They're all like in these like weird markets that no one hires from, but we're like that's where the opportunity is. Um, so hiring underdogs, people with a chip on their shoulder, giving them that chance, and I mean that has worked out so well for us.
mm,
And separate from that, I think specific character traits we look for. One is warmth. Like
yeah.
you have to be a nice person to
Yeah.
work on our team. I think everyone really enjoys working with each other on our team. There's no drama. And apart from that, I think clarity of thought.
Yeah.
So I constantly have this debate in my own head, and I think I've come to a conclusion that clarity of thought is more important in life than raw intelligence.
Mm,
Um, you can be the smartest person in the world, but like if you don't think clearly, like you don't know how to prioritize things, you
yeah.
don't know how much effort and priority to put on different things, want to pull back, want to double down. I think it's kind of a waste of that intelligence.
Mm,
So clarity of thinking is something we look at. And then on top of that, it's like the chip on the shoulder, the
mm,
underdog mentality. That matters
got
a
it.
lot. Yeah,
Got
people
it.
have been really good on every other case, but we're like they don't have that chip on their shoulder, and we haven't gone forward with them.
Mhm. Interesting. You have such a diverse team, and but are there any tests which helps you judge somebody's curiosity and the clarity of thought, especially when the interview stages are so short? You spend half an hour or maybe 2 hours with that person, but how do you judge somebody's curiosity or clarity of thought or the underdog mentality in say 30 minutes?
I don't have a specific question that I ask people, but I do think with people who have very clear thinking, you can just tell when you ask them a question, they might pause or, you know, they might take their time or they might answer immediately, but the answer they give you is extremely honest. Sometimes it's very bland, but it's a very honest, true from the heart answer. And sometimes they'll give you a bad answer, but you can tell it's like it's what they believe in. Yeah, it's hard. So they're also willing to say I don't know a lot, even during interviews. I think
Yeah.
that's a oddly good sign. Um, oh, another thing we test for is tempo, just like how fast is their internal clock.
Mm,
And this isn't necessarily a thing that we look out for, but there has been correlation in the past with how quickly they want to schedule interviews and how quickly they want to start with how good their like faster tempo is internally. So multiple hires before we asked them like, oh, when do you want to meet for our next interview? And they're like, this afternoon. Very like shrug, like it's normal, like, okay, sure. And then after a few interviews, it's like, oh, when do you want to start? And they're like, tomorrow. It's like very matter of factly. So that's funny. Like, that's we don't hold that as like a bar to hire, but that has had a good correlation in the past.
got it. Interesting. And do you think there's certain people in the stages of startup who are good for a fit in the first 50 employees or 10 employees,
Mhm.
and then uh, they may not be the right fit going forward. Or what are your thoughts on that? Would a big company can also work in Vimcal, or is it going to be people who worked in startups would understand what it takes to build in startups?
Yeah. I haven't had that much experience in the transition from a startup to a big company yet.
Yeah.
I have worked, in a solely big company, in a solely startup environment. Uh, I would say it is pretty hard for someone that's used to being in very big corporate
Mm,
company. Unless they really want it and they show that they're like, okay, just a startup is a better fit for my personality.
yeah.
Um, if they're on the line, if they're not sure, like usually it doesn't work out.
Mm,
Um, I do think a startup person could do well at a big company. I just think they would be very bored.
yeah.
I just think they would feel out of place, but I think they would do a good job. But the reverse of that is not necessarily true. Like in a startup, you need to look for startup specific people.
Mm,
In terms of the transition, thinking about as we grow our team, I want to focus a lot on developing our teammates so that they can grow with the company. I
yeah.
believe a lot in internal hiring and internal promotion rather than external hiring for leadership roles. But it's still early for us to say. So I'll hold my
Yeah.
judgment on that.
Got it. Got it. And have you made any big hiring mistake, or you looked at hiring mistakes people have done in the past, which you would advise founders not to do?
I think when you're a very small team, you don't really have a brand, and it's a huge risk to work for your like two-person startup.
Yeah.
It's really easy to skimp on some of the hiring best practices to get someone to join. And I think when we were like 2 to 5 people is when we made the most. And when no one knew what Vimcal was when we made like a lot of our hiring mistakes. One of them I would say is just hiring a friend, like hiring people in your personal network that you don't do a proper interview with.
Mm,
We've made that mistake a few times, and it hasn't worked out and for various reasons.
yeah.
Some of it was on us, but um, just because someone is smart doesn't mean they're a good fit at your startup, right? They could
Mm,
crush it elsewhere, but your startup has a very specific culture. Um, Also, I think the only exception is if you've worked with this person before.
mm,
You might know them very well for like the last 10, 15 years, but unless you're working with someone and playing with someone are two very different things. They might have
yeah.
gone to a good school, they might have done this and this and worked at this and this company, but unless you've sat next to each other side by side and worked on the same project, you don't know what that person is like when things go wrong in a high stakes situation.
Mm, got it. And when things go wrong, you've hired a friend whom you think would be the right fit and doesn't work out. What sort of conversation or dialogue happens in which you would want to part ways but also remain friends?
Yeah, it's very painful.
Yeah,
Um, I think it's one of those cases that, first of all, just like any of these decisions, it should never be a surprise.
yeah,
So if it does end up happening, there should have been multiple conversations over a period of time
right.
up to the point where you decide to part ways. And then when you do part ways, it has to be immediate. I think as long as the entire time you continuously set the context that like, hey, we have a relationship outside of this. Because a lot of times, you're friends with someone and then you start working together, and 100% of your conversations are now on Slack, right?
Yeah.
You used to text each other, you used to like DM each other, but now you're like working on this very intense startup, and you kind of like wall each other off from your social lives
Mm,
because you have the work part is just such a big, it just takes over both of your like, minds. And so you kind of want that space in the social life, and you just have to make sure that as you exit, like you have to kind of reintroduce that social aspect back into your life.
mm.
Because we have, again, I've been in a situation where we had to let someone go and I just didn't talk to the person for like a year or two. And it's just the entire time in the back of your mind, you're thinking, who's going to talk to who first? Right. And like, this is one of the closest people in my life. So,
Oh,
yeah, it's tough. I don't think I would do that again.
mhm. Got it. And I quickly want to do the top three. What's your favorite business book?
Favorite business book? It's a quick read. I would say The One Thing. It's by, I think, Gary Keller.
Yeah.
I'd be butchering his name, but basically in your daily to-dos, in um, a go-to-market strategy, a marketing campaign, when you're launching a new feature, you always think, what's the one thing that if we get this right, everything else is either um, easier or not even necessary, right? If you have a 20, I think Brian Chesky said this, if you have a 20 item to-do list, there's always one thing in there that if you finish that first, it'll knock out like 15 of the other things. So you don't even have to do the other things.
Yeah.
Um, and since I've implemented that in my life, I think just everything has just worked out better for our marketing, for our product, for my own just stress level, right?
Yeah.
Because I have 20 things to do every day. But usually there's one thing where if you get done by like 11 a.m., the rest of your day just feels so light and easy.
Mm.
So I think that has had the most impact for me on my like, mental health going through the startup journey.
Got it. Got it. We'll put it down in the show notes. And if you could go back in time when you started building Vimcal, what is the one thing you would have focused on or done things differently?
The one thing I like that. I think one thing that we could have done differently is when we found something that worked really well, we a lot of times didn't double down on it. Um, and we moved on to the next thing. So we launched, for example, our most popular feature is called slots. It's our availability feature. It's what people come to Vimcal for. We basically launched that with V1, and for the next, I would say almost a year, we barely made any modifications to it. Today you can, select your slots to send out to someone and have a booking link, but we didn't add that booking link for like a year. It's just like all these little things where if we knew that was the thing that worked so well, we should have put all our efforts into milking it as much as possible. Um, Converse to that, when something was working well, we've also depended on it for too long. So the 1,000 onboarding calls I told you about,
Yeah.
I think at about like 400 or 500, I probably could have had someone else start doing it where like it was like diminishing returns. And there
Yeah.
was a point where like we weren't learning as much anymore and my time is more valuable. But because it was working so well and I was so comfortable with it, I was hesitant to step away, even though it would have been better for the company. And then, it took like 7, 8 months for us to hire someone to start doing the onboarding calls.
Mm. Got it. And what's your favorite online tool for example, Gmail, Slack, Zoom, anything other than Vimcal?
It's this very random website called easygif.com, like the letter E, the letter Z, gif.com. If you just have to convert any assets like video to GIF, GIF to video, all like Shortnik, whatever, it will do a pretty good job doing the conversion and keeping the file small. It's very random. I was trying to say something that not many people know about, but that's what I've been using a lot of times for like our product announcements.
Very interesting. I've never heard about it, but I'm gonna check this out. And John, what is the best way people can reach out to you and know more about Vimcal?
Yeah, I am on Twitter and LinkedIn. And if you want to learn more about Vimcal, just go to vimcal.com. Or if you are an EA or have an EA, you can go to vimcal.com/EA to check out our EA product.
Got it. We'll put that in the show notes. John, thank you so much for taking the time speaking to us. I really enjoyed my conversation with you.
This was really fun. Thanks so much, Rohit.